Every profession has its official story, kind of like the highlight reel. But what about all the stuff that gets left on the cutting room floor? That's what we're diving into today. We're going to look at one field's hidden history and see what it can teach all of us about the things we're trained to ignore.
I mean, think about it for a second. Engineering, medicine, law, they all have this really neat, clean timeline of their greatest hits, right? It's the story they tell all the newcomers to show them, hey, here's where we came from, this perfect, straight line from the past right up to today.
But that super clean story, it brings up a huge question. What if the stuff that got left out is just as important as the stuff that made it in? What if the real story is actually hiding in all those blank spaces on the timeline?
So to really dig into this, we're going to look at one specific field, Instructional Design and Technology, or IDT for short. Now, I know it sounds super technical, but its goal is actually really simple, and it affects all of us. It's all about finding better ways for people to learn.
So yeah, at its core, ITT is all about creating learning experiences that actually work. It's a field built on logic, on process, and on getting results you can actually measure. You can kind of think of it as the science, the blueprint, behind how training programs and school courses get built.
And here it is. This is the standard history of IDT. It is exactly what we were just talking about, this perfect, neat progression of big names and big ideas. You got Pavlov, Skinner, Bloom, each one just logically building on the one before. It's a beautiful, clean story. But is it the whole story? Well, this perfect, tidy story, this is exactly what started to bother a researcher named Amy Bradshaw. She was feeling this growing disconnect between her own professional field and, the rest of the world. And it led her to ask a really tough question. She just saw this massive disconnect. I mean, here's this entire field dedicated to improving how humans learn, but it seemed to be operating in this little bubble, completely walled off from all the urgent social issues and injustices that were happening right outside its door. How is that even possible? And what Bradshaw argues is that these clean timelines, they do way more than just tell a story. They actually build that professional bubble. By handpicking what counts as history, they create this illusion, this idea that the field just popped into existence in a vacuum, totally separate from the messy, complicated reality of the times. So what happens when you actually tear down that wall? Well, Bradshaw did this fascinating experiment. She took the standard IDT timeline and she put it right next to a timeline of social justice events from the exact same years. And let me tell you, when you see them together, the silence is just deafening. Okay, let's look at 1954. On one hand, you have B.F. Skinner publishing his groundbreaking work on the science of learning. And in the very same year, the Supreme Court hands down the Brown v. Board of Education decision, declaring school segregation unconstitutional. I mean, two absolutely massive moments about education happening at the same time, and yet they are almost never, ever talked about in the same conversation. Fast forward just a couple of years, Benjamin Bloom is publishing his famous framework for educational goals, and at the same time, the civil rights movement is literally being forged in fire. You have the horrific murder of Emmett Till, and you have Rosa Parks sparking the Montgomery bus boycott. It's just one timeline is all about neatly organizing knowledge, and the other is about a desperate fight for basic human dignity. And this next one, this one is really jarring. So in 1962, Robert Gagne publishes this thing called The Conditions of Learning. But in that exact same year, James Meredith becomes the first Black student at the University of Mississippi, and his condition for learning was facing a violent mob. He needed thousands of federal troops just to be able to go to class. And suddenly, this abstract academic theory and the brutal lived reality, they just collide in a way that you absolutely cannot ignore. So the author's point is that this separation, it is not an accident. It's not just a coincidence. She calls it a form of miseducation. We don't just happen to miss these connections, we are actively taught not to see them. And the result is this incredibly flawed picture of our own professional world. To really get how this flawed reality gets built, the paper gives us a fantastic analogy. Just imagine an AI, and the only thing you feed it is entries from an encyclopedia. That's it. So after it processes all that information, it comes to a conclusion that's perfectly logical, but completely wrong. It concludes most people are prominent.
So why is the AI so wrong? Well, it's because its data was totally biased, right? It only saw the outliers, the exceptions, the people who are famous enough to make it into an encyclopedia. And that is the perfect parallel here. These standard professional timelines, they're just a biased data set. They only show us the prominent milestones. And they give us this sanitized, squeaky clean version of our field that's totally disconnected from the real world.
And this all leads to a really powerful conclusion. By staying silent on these big issues, by pretending that our work happens in some neutral, apolitical bubble, we aren't actually being neutral at all. It brings to mind that famous quote from the historian Howard Zinn, "You can't be neutral on a moving train." Trying to claim neutrality when there's injustice all around you, that is in itself a choice. And it's a choice that ends up supporting the way things already are.
Okay, so if silence isn't really an option, then what is the alternative? How do professionals break out of this cycle of learned ignorance? The author suggests we need to move from just passively learning about things to actively engaging with them. And there's a name for this concept. It's called praxis.
This idea actually comes from the legendary educator Paulo Freire. And praxis, it's not just about thinking, and it's not just about doing. It's the powerful cycle that connects the two. It means you reflect on the world, really think about it, and then you use your skills to take action and actually change it. It's all about bridging that gap between what you do for a job and the world you actually live in.
And here's kind of how that cycle works. Step 1 is to reflect. You take a hard look and ask, okay, how does my daily work fit into the bigger social picture? Then, step 2, you act. You intentionally use your professional skills not just to check boxes, but to consciously address the injustices that you now see. And the whole point, the ultimate goal, is transformation. It's about using your professional power not just to get ahead in the current system, but to help build better, more just systems for everyone.
And that brings everything full circle, right back to today. This whole journey through a hidden history, it's not just some abstract academic exercise. It's a challenge. It's a challenge for all of us. It forces us to stop looking so much at the past and to start asking some really tough, really personal questions about the work we do. You know, our day-to-day jobs, no matter what field we're in. And so we're left with this huge question. And listen, this isn't about feeling guilty about the past. It's about taking responsibility for the future. The most important question isn't what did people ignore back then? It's what are we choosing to see right now? How can my work, your work, whatever it is, become a tool for building a better, more just world? What this all suggests is that every single project, every decision we make is an opportunity. And so the real question becomes, what are we going to build with it?